Hey everyone, Indonesia's book reader here. Today I want to talk about this vegan propaganda and other lies the meat industry tells you by Ed Winters. First of all, I'll admit that I'm not vegan. I only eat vegetables for about 90% of my diet each year, which I'll elaborate further later since it helps explain my frustration with this book. And secondly, I'm really trying my best here not to be the meat eater who points at cringy individuals who make being vegan their whole personality online, because it's the equivalent of a monkey pointing at a mirror. These are also people who make eating meat their whole personality that them making fun of the vegans only circles back to also being cringy. But this book definitely did not help with that effort of not making fun of vegans. The book is a combination of the author's memoir of his journey from being a meat eater to being a vegan, which I think is fine and even true. Vegan is much better for the environment, as I've said in my previous book review. What makes this frustrating is how a lot of the information presented can be considered cherry picking. It took me more than I should to read this book because I'm spending most of those time checking what the book is saying and what the book is not saying from what it's saying. For example, in an earlier chapter, the book mentioned how we turn from hunter-gatherer to farmer, and that's the decision that helps us spread further on Earth. Like, see guys, it's because of our change from eating meat to vegetables we did this. But it did not mention at all that foraging wild plant has always been a thing even while hunting animals. It did not mention that trapping and hunting did not stop even after we become farmer. It did not mention that domesticating an animal for livestock and breeding them starts when we become farmer that did not always have to move from one place to another constantly. And it did not mention that that's when we started using a lot of fire for deforestation for farmlands and as a result ending a lot of ecosystem where animals live in peace. And that is what I mean by cherry picking. It is picking various conversations from all these topics that are mentioned in the book, but only select a few bullet points from those topics so that it can strengthen its own point. And it is unfortunately also paired with a lot of moral grandstanding that is trying so hard to use a lot of other humanitarian movement in our society in ways that not only, as I mentioned, cherry picking, but I would even go as far as say very disrespectful and downplay a lot of the difficulties those movements face and is still facing. It mentioned that one of the reasons we should avoid animal products is to avoid cruelty, and then brings in an example to the exception like a murderous dictator and comparing fighting for the right to animal life to the fight against women's rights. Which I don't think the author is quite aware that these are still ongoing issues, especially by comparing veganism to feminism. Being called cringe online is a tad bit different than people wanting to take the autonomy of your own body. He then goes on to give examples on how much animal species has gone extinct in Australia, but without seemingly any deep understanding of the corruption that caused this massive extinction and deforestation that goes a lot deeper than because people eat beef. The book, as with most cases for veganism missionary, tends to forget that in the middle and lower rank of economy, meat doesn't just literally feed us. It also puts food in our table. You cannot just ignore how much easier it is to sell food and make a living from it through selling meat-based cooking compared to selling vegetables. You cannot just ignore the people that are able to make a living from them and also the people who have a limited choice on what they get to eat because of what life dealt to them. And this isn't even me talking about problems that only arose in other countries since I'm not from UK where the author is from. But this is also something that the author from the Genesis, which came also from UK, mentioned in his book, so you have to be really boss to not even consider this. One of the reasons I only eat vegan meal for only about 90% of the year is because there's no easy access to vegan meal. There is one restaurant on walking distance and when it closed, that's it. But I don't get bored at the same food. I'm trained for having to eat only instant noodle for years since there was a point in my life that that's all I can afford. I'm sure not everyone can eat at one place all the time. And if there's no place nearby, you have to go really far or buy at a much more expensive to eat vegan meal. You can cook for yourself, but for people who don't have time to cook like because they had 2 full-time jobs, calling these people out for eating meat is like trying to morally shame these people for being poor. Not once in the section where the author teach you how to thrive on the plant-based diet did he ever think that not everyone will be able to get all of this on a daily basis. I mean, this is the concern that the author have on trying to go vegan. Before going vegan, I had a variety of worries. Where would I get my protein? Was it possible to live without cheese? What if I never learned to like tofu? But none of these concerns turned out to be the most challenging part of choosing veganism. His worries getting enough protein and good cheese. The book did not even mention all the issues I've raised at all. Instead, it's trying so hard to blame people not going vegan because of taste. It is also trying to debunk a lot of whataboutism that came from meat lover, like what about plant life? Plant life matters too. Which, while there will surely be a lot of people who don't go vegan because of taste, that is not remotely close on why it's so difficult and impossible to go vegan. Again, it's cherry picking. This request for everyone to go vegan is so blind to human suffering that's why making its moral issue fall flat so hard. I really want to cheer for vegans, I do, which is why when I read this, I had to keep reminding myself that not all vegans are like this. Like I would imagine a woman will have to do each time watching an incel be an incel. But books like this that is cutting context from information to fit veganism really makes it harder to not overgeneralize all of vegans into a dumb. And this is coming from me, who are very aware that these are just very vocal and cringy minorities in comparison to the whole vegan community. I can imagine how it is for people whose knowledge on vegans are only from short contents or online articles that are shared to social media. There are actually some interesting information in the book, like how selective breeding causes animals like sheep to be unable to shed its own wool, so if it's not shared manually by human hand, the wool got thicker and thicker each year, making it suffer from just existing. It also did a great job at showcasing animal treatment in the industry, although because of its attempt at making it the fault of meat eater, it downplayed how much of its cruelty is coming from the upscaling of the corporates. The book even have the goal to just blame farmers even though farmers are a victim of the agricultural system too. And what it should do better at, which is showcasing how bad for the environment the industry is, it falls short compared to other books I've read regarding this issue. It's especially less compelling since every step of the way there's so much cherry picking in the writing. Even some small examples like the US cheese surplus where US government have a problem with stockpiling their cheese is an interesting story, but it's more of a problem with the farming industry and inflation that again is never highlighted in the book. I mean, if you're tone deaf and privileged enough to compare the difficulty in promoting veganism to the difficulty that feminist movement have faced, which is far from true, being called cringe for being vegan online is not really that much of a trial and tribulation, it's just a sign of you being online too much. Why not do some things that benefit society, like helping people who don't have time or money to afford eating vegetables only meal on the daily? Have a world kitchen that give vegan meals, or try to open chain restaurant that provide a cheap and affordable vegan menu, because the current one is so overpriced. This book is trying to win a debate, not trying to educate. That's why it's very cherry picking in choosing not only the topic it touches, but also how much of those topics are used. It talks about how it's okay to be mean if it's to dictator, but it didn't really mention how dictatorship still exists and the system that put them in power still persists. It talks about the difficulty women had to be able to vote in the past, but it didn't touch on gender norms and the difficulty women still face today, and how their rights still gets a lot of pushback from people. I don't get why the book tried to even compare them at all. I really don't know if the author knows about these issues and choose to not mention them since it doesn't benefit his talking points, or just actually so ignorant that he's not aware about these issues at all. Either way, it's not a good look and it paints his writing in this layer of dishonesty. This book is trying more to have an argument than a conversation. It is trying more to win at talking rather than educating. And as a result, instead of showing what makes becoming a vegan is the better choice, it is trying to convince people how good a person you are if you are a vegan, while avoiding all the topics that might not support his claim. His talking point does not help in making any points. The book mentioned the difficulty of slaughterhouse worker briefly, but did not provide any alternative solution at all on how they can make a living. It instead are busy trying to counter being called having no sense of humor by going all, "Hey guys, I can be funny too" at the start. For a book titled Vegan Propaganda and Other Lies Told by the Meat Industry, it is written in such a dishonest way. You know what the author of this book should do? Cut off his hair and become a monk for a year or two. Maybe they'll teach him more compassion not just to animals but also to his fellow human being. I won't stop reading books that will educate us on how good plants are for us just because of this guy, because as other books like Regenesis that I've read before this book, they have a different purpose. It's not trying to win an argument, it's trying to educate. Because of that, it has so much more educational value to it that might just change your diet to add more vegetarian menu to them. It's so different from this book that is trying to win in talking. You can see how he brings up oilseed usage that are better than meat, which is true by the way, but did not mention at all that oilseeds is not that much better in comparison with how much damaging they are to the environment. As I mentioned, the book has some good things, but it is stained with so much of the other half-ass information and its tone deafness. There are still so much to break down from this one book, including one big chapter in disease from animals that are also oversimplified so much and have the same cherry-picking issue. If you're full vegan, good for you. If you're someone who wants to add more vegan to your menu, good for you. If you're someone that cannot afford to go to any percentage of vegan yet because of all the reasons I've mentioned, then don't make people like the author makes you feel guilty. This is also not helping much even with all the privilege given to him. The author did not even mention at all about the difficulty that farmers face to make a living through farming in the current system. And these are the people that enable the author to add his vegan meal. But he had the gall to say be empathetic at the end of the book. So I don't think you should feel guilty about not being able to go vegan from people like this. Well, there are a few good information you might be able to pick up from the book. Since the book likes cherry picking so much, I will treat it the same way. I give this a 0. What do you think? Are you gonna read it? Did I miss anything? Leave your thoughts in the comment below and subscribe to the channel. That's about it.